Okay. Right. I'm just having a look at this now. Can everyone hear me okay? If you want to just drop me a note in the chat here. The chat's quite sparse at the moment. Okay, anyone have any questions at all? Okay, so there's no questions coming at the moment, that's fine. Okay. So I just want to quickly expand on just a couple of things then. So we mentioned earlier on about the one-to-one coaching sessions and the mix and master critiques. As I say, they're going to be something that we're advertising through Fiverr.com, and it's something just to, it's just another service which kind of add. I'm doing a lot of, there's a lot of people asking me if I'm doing this critiquing service and to help them out with some one-to-one coaching sessions. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be a real good value add. So if you're interested in any of those sessions, then say it's fiverr.com/smudge MITB, and we can look at the booking in some coaching sessions and some one-to-ones. And one thing I really want to kind of push at the moment is, if you want your song mastered and you want your song featured on the YouTube channel, get in touch, let me know. Email me, smudge@masteringitb.com. I'll quickly put it in the chat now. And drop me a note and let me know. I love using the Cambridge Music Technology website for songs, but the agreements that they have there are that if you have these YouTube channels, you can use them under educational purposes. You can't use them if you are earning ad revenue and things like that. Now, not to say that I don't actually earn ad revenue, but it is one of those things. It's not really designed for the YouTube streams and YouTube videos, etc., etc. So I can do certain things with them, and I will still keep showcasing them. But obviously, we need to be kind of very careful as to kind of how we use them for different contexts. So I've got different client songs that I'm mastering, and I've got permission to use those. So I really want to kind of showcase those as well. And say, if you've got any song that you want to master, you want featured on Mastering in the Box, then get in touch, smudge@masteringitb.com, and we can have a discussion as to how we can go about getting that sorted for you. Hi Dwight, how are you? Okay. If you're wondering why I'm sweating like mad here, I've got a blooming great big box light right here, and it's very, very toasty. Okay. I just want to quickly ask you guys, when did this live stream start? Because it's showing on OBS. On OBS, it's showing that I've been gabbling on here for around 50 minutes. but I don't think. Yeah, you know what? I bet you anything this live stream hasn't been playing through YouTube. So I've been gabbling away for 50 minutes, and it doesn't look as if it's been broadcasting. Fantastic! Don't you just love technology? Brilliant. So what I'm going to do is just recap certain things here, and go over some things again. So for those who have just joined, or yeah, just for the sake of it, just in case there's been some technology issues. So yeah, just go over some things. So whereabouts. So firstly, apologies. I've been ill for the last say week and a half, 10 days with glandular fever. So I'm back, fit, ready, raring to go, and I've got lots of different stuff lined up. I've been working on different things. So I'm introducing some one-to-one coaching and mix and mastering critiques through Fiverr.com. So I've left the link in the chat. So if anyone, they're not live at the moment, they'll be going live in the next day or two. So if anyone wants to get in touch over some one-to-one coaching or mix and master critiques, then check out the link, Fiverr.com /smudge MITB, and we can have a chat around how we can kind of help you with some coaching sessions or some critiques. So if you have any questions, then give us a shout. Drop us a note in the chat and we can take some questions as we go through. I've just gone through some of the essential mastering plugins, but I'm going to go through them again just in case there was some IT issues. But it's just kind of mentioned as well, got lots and lots lined up. In terms of some videos coming up very soon, I've got the Olo Audio S4X review. So they are fantastic headphones, they really are. I cannot kind of say enough about them, and I've got them just here, and they not only do they look fantastic, they sound absolutely brilliant as well. I've been using them pretty much exclusively now for mastering for the last couple of months, really enjoying the results. The first master I did with them, I thought that I may have some kind of I thought I may have some challenges with the way that they translate to the monitors, but absolutely not. No, first master I did, it was kind of like, yeah, brilliant. Really loved it. The clarity, I think that's the thing, is the clarity and the definition you get with superior headphones. It's the monitoring environment for critical listening tasks is key. And if you can get something like the Olo Audio, if you in a room that's not particularly that if it's not ideal, then maybe look at something like the Olo Audio S4X. I cannot highly recommend them enough. They are brilliant. I'm not being paid to say that. I've paid for them. But just to kind of give you an idea, there was a particular song, and it was an Alterbridge song. And the vocal, I'd never heard the reverb before in such detail. Just the reverb and the vocal and the decay of the reverb was just amazing. The clarity you get from them is just, yeah, it's just phenomenal. So I've got that coming up about the Olo Audio S4X, so watch out for that one coming up soon. As I say, I'm part way through building some speaker stands, and it's been something that I've been looking at for some time now. So for those who are new into the monitor environment, it's not really good practice to put your speakers directly onto a desk or a hard surface, because the way that the vibrations work when they go through the speakers, they can vibrate the desk, causing lots of low end frequencies, and it can really kind of cloud your listening environment. So when you get into things like speaker stands, we need to look at concepts such as coupling and decoupling, and we'll go through that around this speaker stand build. But effectively, I'm building these myself using hand tools, because I'm not a DIY expert, I'm not a master craftsman in any way, shape or form. I'd rather sit and drink beer watching someone else do it, but I thought I'd do this myself because I really do enjoy it. So we're going to do that, go through the process, how to build them, and look at some of the materials we use. It's all going to be with hand tools, so I'm literally doing things with literally hand saws and stuff like that, so that, you know, it's going to be really minimal on the in the tool stakes, and the materials as well. The wood is just going to be reused wood. So the desk I've got here in front of me, there was a shelf that everything was on top of. I've taken the shelf off, and actually I'm using that shelf pretty much as the wood to build the stands. And I've kind of reinforcing the certain parts with different other bits of wood, and I'm going to make it all tidy. I've bought some would affect vinyl coating type thing, just to kind of make it look really presentable. But there's other things that I've got in there as well. So we're going to fill it with sand to add mass to the stands, and I've got some specialist materials to go on the bottom of the stands and on the top of the stands to try and not only couple but decouple at the same time, to try and get that really kind of good isolated effect from the speakers. So that's something I've got lined up as well. This whole room is going to be changing. I'm going to be changing my setup and philosophy, so I've got some things lined up with that. I've been doing obviously headphones has been a big feature here, and I reached out to the guys over at D-Sonic, and I've got a copy of the real phones, which I paid for as well, which I'll be doing a review of and giving you my thoughts on that. I love the idea of it. As to how it works at the moment, so I'm very kind of novice with that, but I want to do a full review on that and give you my thoughts as well. Another thing that's on my radar is the review of the Acon Digital Acoustica 7.2 software. This has been something that I've been looking at for quite a long time now, and it looks like a fantastic solution for advanced repair work. You can use it for mastering, and you can use it for a lot of things like dialogue editing and things like that. If you've got a stereo file that you want to kind of split some elements out, it's got a tool where you can split elements out, so you can split out the drums, guitars, bass, vocals, that kind of thing. But for me, I really want to kind of focus on the repair work, because it's got some fantastic tools in there. I know Reaper has got the spectral editing, but it's got some advanced spectral editing capabilities in there. Think of it like the way I kind of liken it is it's almost like an RX, but you know, it's not going to break the bank. It's really good. It's a good efficient tool. It's good price, good cost-effective tool. So I'll be doing a full review of that as well. So it's Acoustica 7.2 by Acon Digital. As well as I've got lots of other things lined up, lots of different tips, techniques, tricks, and things like that. So lots of things like that to line up as well. Okay, I just want to quickly look through the chat here. Okay, we've got quite a few. Fantastic. We've got some different viewers on now, some people viewing. I've got a funny feeling this has been there's been a bit of an issue between OBS and YouTube. Of course, I'm not going to blame myself. I'm going to blame this system, because I can. I'm not going to blame myself, and I can blame the system, even though it's probably this muppet here hasn't pressed the right button. But we'll go through things again quickly, and if you've got any questions, then let me know in the chat as well. So the main aim for this was to kind of give you an idea of some 5 essential plugins. So the theory behind this was, I've been seeing quite a few different people, novice mastering engineers, or novices to mastering, asking questions around what tools should I be using for mastering. And you typically get lots, a varied response. But the amount of times I see people saying, "Well, I use this plugin for this, this 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 for this," and before you know it, you've got 10, 12 plugins in a mastering chain. And I can't help but thinking, it's like, I don't think I've ever used 12 plugins in a mastering chain, because you don't need it. And it was kind of thing, if I was looking at this from a kind of a novice perspective, or someone fresh to mastering, thinking, blimey, I've got 12 different processes or 12 different plugins that I need to go through just to master a song, it would, it could put you off before you even start. So I thought, well, actually, you don't need 12 plugins. I think there are 5 essential mastering plugins that you really need, and I'll go through them now. I'm going to quickly reopen Reaper, and then I can show you, because I've got almost like a blank project here, and then I'm just going to go into here, and we'll change this to door capture mode, and let's get rid of OBS, and you should now all be able to see the Reaper session. And plugin number 1, in my opinion, is going to be a loudness meter. So in any DAW, you're going to be able to measure the peak and generally your RMS. So here you can see that the main master out here is going to give you your peak level, and it will give you your RMS, which is a good average reading. But mastering in modern methods for, especially for digital platforms. We don't really measure in, certainly not in peak level as such. Some people still like to measure using VU meters in RMS, but a lot of people now it's looking at LUFS and the loudness units relative to full scale in conjunction with the true peak level. So it's very important to remember that it's in conjunction with the true peak level, not in addition to. So it's the loudness units relative to full scale and the true peak level. So if you can get a good loudness meter that gives you those readings as well as your peak and RMS, then great. And one of my favourites here is the Tr5 Metering plugin. This is part of the T-Rax series, and I think this is great. It gives you your true peak. So when we're looking at true peak, we are looking at this is really going to be where we start to measure how much headroom we have before we render and send it out to the distribution companies. So we need to leave some form of headroom, say 1 dB or 2 dBs worth of headroom, so when we're looking at -1 true peak level, to allow for the upload process to the streaming platforms. Because as part of the codecs that they use for that and for the normalizing, it can apply or it can allow maybe potentially a dB's worth of gain. So they normally say allow a true peak figure of no higher than -1, maybe -2 in certain cases. So a true peak reading in there is quite important. But it's your LUFS measurements. And so with this here, we've got the integrated and we've got the momentary, and we've got the VU meters here, and we can say we've got a good a spectrum analyzer here as well. That's the IK Multimedia, the metering plugin from T-Rax, but a good free option is this one, and it's the DP Meter 5 by TB Pro Audio. And the thing I love about this is it gives you your EBUR 128 mode for the loudness standards for Europe. If you see EBUR 128, it's just a loudness standard, but it's the LUFS that you want to measure. And this gives you your measure in integrated, short-term loudness and short-term max, and your momentary loudness and momentary max. Now, the integrated is going to give you the average reading for the entirety of the sound source. So if you've got a song, you play it from start to finish, your integrated will give you your average perceived loudness for the entirety of the song, whereas the short-term and the momentary are a much smaller measurement in time. They are great to use, so the short-term and momentary are great to use as kind of guides to really kind of help you understand your dynamic levels. So if you're getting an integrated level at say -12, but you're getting a momentary somewhere around say -9, -10, then it's actually showing that at its max it's going higher than the -12, but your average is around -12. Which is good because it's telling you you're going to have some dynamics. And with this here as well, it gives you your true peak max figure, which is really useful for the streaming platform. So these are, I say, the loudness meter is a good place to start when it comes to Essential Mastering plugin number 1. Essential Mastering plugin number 2 has got to be a limiter. And I'm going to show you the TR5 Stealth Limiter by IK Multimedia again. This is the one I love. It goes in pretty much all of my masters. And pretty much because it's so simple to use. You have an input and an output ceiling. So you have the ceiling, which is going to dictate the level or the maximum peak level that should go into the limiter. So if you set it to -1, like we said, we need to leave that headroom for the upload process. So if you set your ceiling to -1, and you can then use your input to boost the overall level going into the ceiling. You have some intersample peak levels here, so it's kind of acting a bit like oversampling. So the way that it's going to work is the more you oversample, the less chance you have of intersample peaks happening. And intersample peaks is effectively, it's all to do with the recreation of the sound between the analog and digital conversion. So an intersample peak is potentially if you have insufficient samples to recreate the full waveform, then you may not fully replicate what's happening with the entire sound. So if at the top of your peak, for example, you have a sample here and the next sample is here right next to it, then it's going to suggest that it goes in a flat line, so it very linear fashion. But we know that the waveform goes up in crests crests and you know, peaks and troughs. So if you've got the two samples here, but you've got nothing to recreate this part here, then this could be classified as an inter-sample peak. So it could be additional gain in between the samples, which may not be picked up by the limiter. So if you've got some form of oversampling function, it kind of minimises those as well. You do have some modes in here. So if you've got type, balance, harmonics, I don't really use them. And if you're then looking at your reducing bit depth, you've also got diver, some diver settings. So that's a paid one, but there is a free one here, which is the Limited Z by LVC Audio. Very simple. You've got a ceiling, you've got a gain, and you've got, say, some almost, I wouldn't say presets, but you've got like punch, clean, smooth, aggressive. Very simple, but it's just a real good free option to get you started with. LVC Audio do some great plugins, and this is no exception here. So if you just want to get a free version just to kind of test out what a limiter does, then check out this one. And sometimes it's also good to have one limiter going into another limiter. And the reason you would do that is so you don't stress one limiter. So if you start to add, you know, lots of different gain into one limiter, if you start to apply 6 dBs of gain into one limiter, maybe put another limiter before it and split it to 3 dBs of gain with each limiter, because you'll get less gain reduction that way, and it'll be less stress, and it won't sound quite so harsh. So maybe check out that as well. Okay, I just want to quickly just check back on the chat. How you doing, Billy? Hope you're keeping well. Okay, cool. So it looks like we've got some people who are able to see the live stream now, which is great. Fantastic. Okay. Let's quickly go back to OBS. Here. Okay, right. So, oh no, we don't want that one. That's my YouTube stream. Okay. Next in line is an EQ. You need a trusty EQ for mastering. I'm not a big fan of the graphical EQs. The graphic EQs are very much like the parametric styles, and there's 3 EQs. Once again, you don't have to have all of these, just one of these will be fine. And the first one, once again, keeping with the T-Rax, the IK Multimedia theme, is the Tr5 Equal plugin. And this I love. There's so many different things. I like the fact you can rescale it nice and easily. But the reason I'm choosing these type of plugins is their versatility. And it's versatile because you have lots of different options. You have mid-side functionality, you have left-right stereo functionality, lots of different options. And with this one, you also get to change the scale as well. So with this one here, we have you can have the scale up to 24 dBs plus or minus. But with this one, I like to set it in 6 dB mode plus or minus, just for the simplicity, because we're looking more in small moves. So, right. Just got to quickly say goodnight to the children. So this is, let's say, it's the TR5 Equal by IK Multimedia, and it's like the thing I say about the mid-side mode. So if anyone's new to mid-side processing, it's a great tool to use for mastering because it allows for more subtle changes in the to EQ the frequency spectrum. And the reason why I say this, say for instance, if you're working with a stereo file and you want to add some air to the vocals, so it's going to be some form of high frequency potentially. If you apply that to the whole of the song, and if you've got, say, guitars that are quite bright, or you've got some cymbals, hi-hats that are quite bright, if you start to apply EQ to the high frequencies across the whole track, yes, you will get some air to the vocal, but you'll also start adding more brightness to already bright guitars potentially, or cymbals, and may create some unwanted harshness. So we can use something called mid-side processing, which effectively splits the stereo frequencies to the mid frequencies. You can process them independently. So if we've got this in kind of mid-side mode here, and I say if I wanted to do something just for the mid frequencies, let's get rid of these here just for this example again. And if I just wanted to do something for the mids, I put it in mid mode, and let's say I wanted to add some low end to the bass. So I could do that. I could put that in, say, a low shelf mode. There we are, 2.3 dBs at, say, 76 Hertz. It's in the mid only. And let's just say I did want to add some high end to the sides. I can put it in side mode and then put a high shelf. and put that on the sides, let's say 10k and above. And then say if I wanted to do something, let's say I wanted to take out some of those mud frequencies, put it in normal stereo mode, and then take something out here. Perfect. And if I put it in mid mode, it's going to give you your mid low boost, and it's obviously going to show the mud cut because that's also applying to the mid frequencies. And put it in the sides, it's also going to show your high end boost and obviously the low end cut because it's applying to the sides as well. So it gives you lots of flexibilities, and having something with lots of different filter shapes is just adds to the versatility, which is great. The second option is a new plugin which I haven't really tried yet, but this is fantastic. I love the idea of this plugin. So this is the Slice EQ by Kilohertz, and I've not really tried this yet, but I think this has got the potential to be so versatile. So you've got the left and right, or you've got the mid side options here, and the thing I love about this particular option is if you, I've got to try and remember this now. There is a way. Okay. Right. So what we got here, here we are. Let's delete these. So this here is going to obviously apply any EQ to all of the stereo field. This is going to apply it to the mid, and this is going to apply it to the sides. Okay, sounds simple. So let's do this same process again. Sides, let's do this high boost again. I'm going to do it here around about 10k. I'm going to do a boost. Note the colour, orange. And it's in side mode only. Now I want to do something for the mids, so let's go for the low end boost again. Put it around 100 Hertz. Color blue. So your side frequency EQ will be orange, your mid frequency will be blue. Let's say I want to do that cut again at around 300 Hertz, and it's white. It's so simple just to have that color difference there, but that is so useful, so you know exactly what you're doing at any one given moment in time. It's, you know, why other companies, or some other companies may well do it, but I know not all of them do. But I just find this it's just so helpful. So that's just something that I think can be really good. And you've got lots of different filter types again here, and all sorts. So this is another good one as well. And if you've got anyone here, say for the Reaper fans amongst you all, you have got to check this one out. This is the Re-EQ, not the Rea EQ, but the Re-EQ. Oh my god, this is a free JS plugin and it is amazing. Let's quickly delete this. So let me just think here. I want to add, I don't know, let's just put a small bell curve in here. You've got all sorts of options. You can do loads of different filters or peaks or whatever you want. You've got functionality. You can do sides, mids, stereo, you know, all sorts. You can isolate the frequency to listen to it, and it's just going to show you what the EQ's doing. It's free. It's a JS plugin, and it comes stock with Reaper. It's great. It does so much. It's certainly worth checking out. So that is the plugin choice number 3, which is a good parametric EQ. Next, let's quickly go on to plugin number 4, which in my opinion is going to be a mastering compressor. One thing I forgot to mention about the limiter. For anyone who's new to limiting, if you have a limiter, and I know, so the Studio One guys here, the stock limiter inside of Studio One is fantastic. If you've got a limiter inside of, say let's take the Studio One limiter for an example, you have a threshold setting in there as well. And the threshold setting defaults to -3. If you're new to limiting, even now I very rarely use a threshold. Set it to 0. Because if you don't set it to 0, what you're effectively doing is applying compression on top of compression. So where we have a ceiling, let's say the ceiling's at -1, we boost the gain of the signal into that ceiling. It will not go above the ceiling and you will get gain reduction. If you start using a threshold to apply compression, you're then going to apply compression on top of the natural compression you're going to get through limiting. So if you start finding that your masters they're flat, lacking energy, they sound too compressed, it could be because you've got a threshold setting on your limiter. Set it to 0. and this kind of falls in nicely with the next plugin, which is a mastering compressor. And I love this one. This is the Alesia Alpha Master by Brainworks and Plugin Alliance. I like this because the ratios are low. It goes from literally 1.1 to 2.4. The ratios are so low, and it's perfect for just subtle natural compression. You have the usual suspects with your attack and release. You have some sidechain functions. You've got a mix and a soft clip. You can even do mid-side mode. So like we mentioned with the EQ, if you want to do mid-side compression, so you want to compress the mid-frequencies independently of these sides, this is a great tool to do it as well. But a mastering compressor, if you're looking for a more subtle, natural mastering compression, I would much rather use a mastering compressor than a limiter, because a limiter, yes, it is a compressor, but it's quite a hard compressor. It's got an unlimited ratio because it's going to really clamp down on those peaks. And if you're looking for that glue, I don't particularly like the term, but if you're looking for that glue and that overall kind of cohesive compression, then a mastering compression with a low ratio will be really good for that option. And the other option here I've got is the TDR Molotov. This is a free plugin. And if anyone hasn't checked out the Tokyo Dawn Labs plugins, you've got to check them out. They are great. There's two options. You have the standard editions, which are free, and you have the gentleman's editions, which are they're paid for, but they are very cost effective. I think their bundle comes with like 7 or 8 plugins, and it's around £150 for 7 or 8 plugins. It's great. And likewise with this plugin here, you've got ratios very subtle. It goes from say 10.9 all the way down to 1.1 to 1, so you can get a real good subtle ratio. Sidechain high pass filter, so if you don't want to start applying too much to the too much compression to the low end, that is great. And this is where you get the gain reduction from the threshold here. I wouldn't use threshold with a limiter, but certainly use it with the master compressor, and use your makeup to obviously balance any gain reduction you get in. Attack release, you've got some different flavor settings here, but another good option here is this delta button. A delta function lets you hear what the compression is doing, so it kind of filters out everything except for the frequencies that are being compressed. Such a great useful tool. So if there's something in particular you think, okay, I really want to focus in and apply some compression to tame snare, let's just say snare, and you could use your delta, apply your compression settings, apply the delta function, and listen, is it applying that specific compression I want to the snare? Great useful tool to have. So that is the TDR Molotov by Tokyo Dawn Labs. Okay, before I get on to the last one, I'm just going to quickly flip back and we'll have a look on the... Okay, any more questions here? Okay, no more questions coming out. If you do have any questions, please let me know in the chat. I'm more than happy to take questions as we go through. No worries, Dwight. No worries at all. Right, so let's go back to the door capture. Okay, and then the last plugin, and this is by no mention a necessity, but the last plugin I've gone for here is a multi-band compressor. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really use a multi-band compressor that often. I don't think it's a necessity by any stretch of the imagination, but it's very handy to have in certain circumstances. It's one of those probably utility tools that I think you may use kind of maybe 60% of the time, but you won't use it on every single master, or I don't use it on every single master anyway. I had someone mention the other day for a forum around what are your favourite multi-band compression settings, and it's kind of like, well, you can't really answer that question because it all depends on the source, it depends on the song, and it's kind of, well, what are you trying to do? And it's the response back was, well, trying to apply some even compression across the track, and the response there was, well, if you're trying to apply even compression, the multi-band compressor is not that tool for that job, because it's going to allow you to separate the bands as to how you want them, to apply different compression settings to different frequency bands. If you want an even compression, a multi-band compressor, it isn't the tool for the job. And I would also go as far as saying that you need to be really kind of intentional how you use it, because it can really screw up a master by using it incorrectly. So two of the common uses that I would use it for is for taming harshness in the high end, so almost like a de-esser. So it's very much kind of using the high bands, kind of performing very much like a de-esser setting. Or if I wanted to kind of give some more consistency to the low end, I'd use the low end of the multi-band compressor there. I don't always even use all 4 bands of a multi-band compressor. This one here is the Acon Digital. I don't own a paid-for multi-band compressor except for this one. And this is one that I've, I'll be reviewing as part of the Acoustica 7.2 package. I do use it, it is very good. You do have this for, so the way you can use this is for obviously applying independent gain, threshold ratio, attack, release and knee settings for the individual bands. And I like this because you can split the phase modes between linear phase and mixed phase, etc. So this is a great one. But if you are new to multi-band compression, and Studio One users, you are very lucky because the multi-band compressor in Studio One is really good. But if you use Reaper, this is a great tool. And even if you don't use Reaper and you want a free multi-band compressor, you can get this, because this is part of the RIA plugs package through Cocos, who are the makers of Reaper. So if you go to Cocos, I think it's Reaper.fm, and if you search for RIA plugs, REAPLUGS, and then there's a package of around 8 plugins. So it's going to be like an EQ compressor, but you get this as well. And this is the RIA X Comp, and it's a multi-band compressor. And one of the things I love about this, if you want, if you want a really, really funky multi-band compressor with 12 bands, add 12 bands of multi-band compression. You can do it, and you've got lots of different things. You've obviously got a full range of your threshold, your ratios, and you've got your threshold, but you've got obviously your other settings, your attack, release, and your RMS. I love the solo current band setting, which is brilliant, so you can really kind of get in and hone in on what the multi-band compressor is doing in that band, which is really good. And if you're new to multi-band compression, it also gives you an auto makeup gain, which is it's obviously going to auto makeup. It's going to apply any gain that you've taken away through your dynamic range compression. So it's a good option to have there as well, and it is free. So those are the 5 essential mastering plugins that I would say that everyone should have, but don't feel you have to use them all, and you don't have to have every single type here. If you have one loudness meter, one limiter, maybe 2, I'll come on to an honourable mention in a minute, which may be a slightly better option. But if you have a loudness meter, a limiter, a parametric EQ, preferably with mid-side functionality, and if you have a mastering compressor and a multi-band compressor, you can do pretty much most except for the really advanced stuff with those 5 plugins. So I'd really recommend checking out. Get 5 of those plugins just as a good starting stone, and then work from there. Okay, there are going to be a couple of honourable mentions. I'm just going to come out of this. I'm going to move back to your full. Okay, here we are, because there are a couple of honourable mentions. And those honourable mentions, once again, these are more utility plugins, but they are good to have for certain circumstances. And the first one is a dynamic EQ, and a real honourable mention must go to the Tokyo Dawn Labs, the TDR Nova, because it is a free plugin, but it is fantastic. And the way a dynamic EQ works is it very much allows you to use standard EQ moves, but it will allow you to either apply compression to that EQ move, or it will allow you to apply EQ and compression. So if you want to apply some equalization and not only take away some of the frequencies but control the dynamics as well in that particular range, it's very handy to do. It's something that I like to do for more surgical uses. I know, surgical mastering probably isn't the right terminology, but if there's something particular I really want to control, then a dynamic EQ will be great for that particular job. And the other honourable mention must be a clipper, and in particular the free clip by Ven Audio. And a clipper, hi Maya, a clipper is a great tool to use going into a limiter. So a case in point, if you're using a limiter and you've got your ceiling set at -1, but you know from your loudness meter there might be something particular that's triggering the peak level to go over -1. You could use a clipper going into a limiter. So what the clipper does is effectively going to just apply a hard ceiling. It's not going to start applying compression, so it just very much clips the top. It's just going to stop it from going over the ceiling that you apply. So if you have got a problem with a particular peak, for example, it's hitting the limiter and the limiter isn't quite controlling the peak level, using a clipper before a limiter can really help that process. It clips the top of the peak before it hits the limiter, and it gives you a much more kind of even sound going into the limiter. So getting something like the free clip by Ven Audio is another special mention, and it's something that if you do suffer with, say, with excessive peaks, then it's something you can look at as well. So that is the other honourable mention. Okay, that's it for the top 5 essential mastering plugins. So I'm really happy to answer any questions. Does anyone have any questions at all? Anything particular, any particular issue, or any question with do with any mastering plugins, or any use case scenarios, or anything in mastering in general? What's everyone working on at the moment? Critical listening for mastering. Fantastic, yeah. Critical listening for mastering is, it pretty much is it's one of the crucial parts to it, because at the end of the day, if you can't hear what you can't hear, is the reality of it. So critical listening is key. There's lots of different kind of facets to how to approach critical listening. And the first thing is going to be, you've got to think about your monitoring environment. And especially for those who are, for those who are bedroom producers, bedroom mixers, bedroom musicians, I think really investing in some quality headphones. You will be surprised now as to how many professional mastering engineers are using headphones, because you can get great consistency with headphones, and that's half the challenge as well. Is not only getting a good critical listening environment, but achieving it consistently, and that goes down to your converters, to the headphones. Something as well as I mentioned earlier on about the Audio S4X, which I use. I think they're fantastic. The thing I'm going to start to look at as well is using a dedicated headphone amp. Now, I don't have any particular problems with the headphone amplifier that's built into my converter, but I do just want to have a dedicated amp, just so it's got its own dedicated power source. So that's something I'm going to look at as well, because you need to have the right power going into some of these headphones as well. But you don't have to be, you don't. I know that some of these headphones, you look at some of the Audeze, the LCDX and above, you're looking at £1,000 or $1,000 and above. You don't have to go that far, but I would urge getting some really good headphones if you want to do some mastering. Some good recommendations. I love the AKG K701s, but nothing for me touches the Olos. They are, I think they're around about the £400 to £450, give or take, around that kind of mark. But I'll tell you what, the sounds that you get from them are just amazing. Like I mentioned, it's just the clarity. The clarity is just insane. There's certain bits in certain songs that you just never hear before, and you think, yeah, okay, I understand now why there's a lot of hype around these speakers. So critical listening environment and critical listening for mastering is key. I think, how do you start to kind of, one of the real keys, and this is one of the things I really want to kind of explain, is critical listening. It has its own, you have got to get your own ways to develop it as well. It's not something that just comes naturally. And I think when it comes to mixing, where you can isolate lots of different sound sources, you can really kind of hone in on certain sounds, where mastering is a little bit different. But you've got to think about it maybe kind of in a more, the way I think about critical listening in the mastering context is very much kind of more like, almost think about it like a multi-band compressor to a degree, and just think about splitting it into bands. So think about low end as a general. How is the low end in general? How does it translate? Because that's what it's all about. It's how you're going to get it to translate. So what's your kick to bass guitar correlation like? How are the guitars and the bass sounding? And what are they, all three of those? What's your sub or your bass? Your bass synth, how are they interacting? Are they clear? Have you got that clarity, or is it just a big mess? And that's the kind of thing, is really kind of honing more on bands rather than potentially individual elements. But it's really trying to achieve that little bit of clarity, and trying to think of build up in certain frequencies as well. So if you start to get to kind of learn nasal frequencies, and I talk about, I am very nasal in myself, and it's something that builds up in obviously vocals, but it can build up in different sources. And if you're in a mastering session, something that maybe look at, if you've got something quite at nasal and it sounds a bit like this, then maybe you want to look at the build up in those kind of areas, and think of, well, what if I was to use an EQ around say 650 to 750 and take a 2 dB cut out? What does that sound like? What's the change in the overall song? Not just the vocal, but what's the change in the overall song? And to really start to think of it more in a broader picture. There's so much to critical listening, there's so much to different ways to approach it and different tools to use, but your monitoring setup has to be key, but it has to be your approach as well, and think about things. Be very clinical with what you are trying to achieve. I think once again it goes back to this whole notion of being very much planning, action and review. It's something I talk about all the time. Am I on par? Planning, action, review. Be very intentional about what it is you want to do in your mastering setup. Maybe only have 5 points. Maybe have 5 things maximum, and think, okay, well, if I can fix this, or I feel that this needs a little bit more warmth, or this needs if this needs a certain tweak here, just be very intentional about what you're doing, be very intentional about the tools that you're going to use, and just build it up slowly, and you'll start to have a much greater ear for the minute details. So that's something as well. So hopefully that's kind of given you a bit more of a, it wasn't all waffle, but it's given you some things to kind of to think about as well. Hi Heavy Metal Mixer, first watching these streams. To be fair, this is only my 3rd live stream. I think it's only my 3rd, and so far all 3 of them have had problems. The first one was screen capturing that didn't capture plugins, which was great. The second one was audio being captured by the microphone from my camera rather than from the microphone, and the third one is just now, having been 35-40 minutes into the live stream, and then realising that there was a disconnect between OBS and YouTube. So I was talking for 35 minutes to myself. So hopefully you are all doing well, and I'll get better at these as we go forward. So, any other questions at all? We've got, so I mean, absolutely no rush to finish this. If you've got any questions at all, let me know. One thing I just wanted to quickly ask is, what are your thoughts on loudness levels? It's a great topic because there's so many different answers and there's so many different opinions. What do you guys think about the loudness levels? This whole loudness normalization, -14 or not? What do you think? Is it a topic you think that's talked about to death? Do you think there's still a lot of misinformation out there? Do you think it's getting better as streaming platforms get better at how to handle it? Do you know what frequency dependent compression is, and how do you use it? It's not really a term that I kind of that's kind of widely bandied around. Do you know what frequency dependent compression? Once again, it depends what your context is. If you're thinking of something like multi-band compression, So that's going to be very much frequency dependent. Another thing you could think about frequency dependency could be something like a sidechain. So it could be something triggering something else. So it depends on what you mean. But there's certain, like, frequency dependent compression. A couple of examples may be something on the lines of like multiband, where you're using a specific frequency band to trigger a compression. So for instance, if I wanted to add some more clarity to low end, then I might just use the low band of a multiband compressor, say between 0 and 100 Hertz, and then apply its own independent compression settings. So it may be, something like I might use, if I wanted a little bit more aggressive, I might go something like 2 to 1, 2.5 to 1, and then kind of play with the attack and release until I got what I was looking for, that kind of thing. So that could be frequency dependent compression. The other thing, sidechaining, is probably something that kind of that crops up when someone says that. So it's frequency dependent compression. It can be looked at two ways. You could use something to duck something over the other, or you could use a sidechain high pass filter where a particular frequency doesn't trigger the compression. So if you've got a broadband compressor with a sidechain function, you can use it sometimes on high end and low end. So if you've got excessive high ends that you don't want to compress, but you want to get some overall compression to the rest of the track, then you could use a sidechain high pass, which kind of effectively, it almost like it stops those low frequencies from triggering the rest of the broadband compressor. Taste per song is spot on. Yeah, absolutely. Most people battle between making it as loud as possible, while others focus too much on the LUF standards. I just go by taste per song. I think that's it. That's exactly it. And yeah, that's certainly my opinion. I still get baffled by the, I still see people now. There's so many myths out there, and this whole notion that if you go over -14 LUFS, the streaming platforms will compress it. They don't compress it at all. It's not compressed at all. It's just they use negative gain to turn the volume down, and even then, there's no standard. This -14 figure, it's not. It's never -14 bang on. Because effectively what they will do is it depends on the listening environment. And when I say listening environment, if you listen to a song in the context of an album, and if you listen to the same song in the context of a playlist, it will be normalised to different levels depending on the other songs. So this is why this -14 thing, yeah, it's a good, maybe a good nominal figure if everyone was to use it and it was standardised, but it's not. And it's even the streaming platforms themselves don't use that figure. It's not a standard figure because it all depends on how you listen to it based on, once again, if it's in an album, if it's in isolation, or if it's part of a playlist. So yeah, I mean, it's very much go by the taste per song, and I totally agree with that. Just know that if you go over -14 LUFS, it's not compressed. They don't squash the track. The only thing they may do is if you are smashing your true peak level, the more you go over -14, obviously because of the coding process and the way that it gets uploaded, if you really want to smash it and go to something -8, and you're only leaving a true peak level of -0.3, you're going to have clipping all over the place. So yeah, that's just something you might want to bear. But that will be the thing, is you might get clipping, but you're not going to get compression. The only time that Spotify now, they will say they will only compress it and limit it compression if the song is not loud enough. But even then, they won't compress it up to -14. This is where the good correlation between the true peak levels and the LUFS, you really need to kind of really kind of get this. So the example that Spotify will use is if you have a LUFS integrated measure of -20 and you have a true peak level of -5, they won't push the LUFS up to -14, so they won't increase it by 6 LU, they will increase it by 4 LU, because they will effectively only push it up to the -1, which is obviously the difference between -5 true peak and -1 is 4 dB. A dB and LU are very much an equivalent kind of measure, so they'll only push it up to -16. So even on that basis, if your loudness standards, if you've got something mastered to -14 and you master yours quieter, it won't sound as loud as something else that's been mastered to -14 or over. Even worse is now you've got Spotify Loud, which came in this year. they will allow listeners to listen to Spotify Loud at -11. So if you've mastered everything with your true peak levels and your integrated lufts to -14, but get someone listening to it at -11, then they are going to limit the track to get it to -11. So it kind of, it brings into question this whole -14 thing in any way. So just go by the taste per song. How to have great gain staging for getting more loudness? Oh, that's a great question. It depends on, there's so many different ways of looking at it, and great gain staging in so many different levels. But it kind of goes back to how you record the song and how the song's performed, and it's having a good enough dynamic range. And this is what I'm saying is kind of, the example I've used, and it's kind of, sometimes we use compression to really kind of boost levels. Compression is not a good thing, because the less dynamic range you have, yes, you can push your overall lufts, but it won't sound as loud as something that's more dynamic. And the way this works, if you really compress something, the difference between your peak and your trough level, so the peak and troughs is quite low. So the way that it measures your integrated lufts is you've got quite a small variance here. So actually your loudest is only going to be here, but your quieter parts will be louder. So your loudest parts will be here, your quieter parts will be here, and your average will be somewhere in the middle. But if you've got a greater dynamic range, so you can have a higher part here and a lower part here, yes, your quieter parts will sound quieter, but your higher parts will sound higher, because the average is probably still somewhere in the middle, but you can compensate for having higher parts than lower parts. So that's why something like dynamics and gain staging is crucial. How do you get great gain staging and get more loudness? I mean, it kind of it's so many different ways to look at it. Obviously, going through making sure your recording source is not too hot. It's I know. There's no need to really, if you're recording digitally into an interface, yes, maybe for a microphone, but unless you're using some form of like real kind of high-end analog pre, there's no need to really kind of, even then you don't really need to go too hot. So just be relatively conservative in your pre-mix or your static mix stage. Once again, leave sufficient headroom. Is a really good train of thought. So you do your static mix. Don't do a static mix and get up to -1, -2 dBs, because by the time you start applying plugins or you want to start tweaking here, you're just going to be smashing your master bus before you've even done anything. It is a little bit kind of different, as technology moves on, and with the more modern bit depths, and with DAWs now pretty much exclusively working in 32-bit float, we do have much more room for manoeuvre, so we can obviously turn volumes down with the master faders and things like that. But yeah, let's say I would do that. Really think about your dynamics going into your master. I just want to say this though, with when it comes to headroom, don't sweat it too much with headroom. And I know I have been myself, and I've been critical of this in the past, saying leave maybe up to 6 dBs of headroom. I would change my mind on that. I've always said around -3 to -6, and I'd probably err more on the side of -3, -4, and -6. And it depends on how you're going to master. And if you master by limiting first, so if you want to get your song into the ballpark loudness first by using a limiter, if you've got 6 dBs worth of headroom and you've got your ceiling to -1, you've then got to put 5 dBs worth of gain into your limiter. So it's kind of like, okay, do we really need 5 dBs worth of gain into limiter? Well, no, not really. If you then look at maybe the -3, -4, it's probably better because you're going to put less stress on the limiter. But if you have got a load of headroom, then you can either kind of turn up the clip level maybe a little bit. I actually like normalising the audio sometimes, because it's taking it out of the limiter. So when it comes to a mastering session, it was a trick that I got from, I think it was Piper Payne, and she was saying she normalises the audio on pretty much all of her masters before she does any processing, because it's going to get the peak level close to the ceiling, without applying any form of compression. So it takes it out of the hands of the limiter, and it lets the DAW do it without applying any form of compression or messing too much with it, or messing at all with the dynamics, because it's all focused on peak level. So that's another good tip. Maybe normalise before you do anything, because then you won't have so much stress going into your limiter as well. So yeah, every single stage of the process you can look at your gain staging. Does that explain it? Does that give you a good enough kind of insight into it? It's there's so many different ways to look at it, but it's trying to give you enough without going overboard. Okay. One question I just wanted to ask you guys as well, I mentioned this earlier on, is around anyone who wants songs featured on the channel. I'm looking for songs to master and feature as part of the channel. I love the Cambridge Music Technology website. It is a fantastic resource, and if anyone wants any songs to practice mixing and mastering on, you've got to check it out. It's just phenomenal. There's so many different songs on there, and you've got all the different multi-tracks. You've got some songs with 10, 12 song files up to 50, 60, 70, 80 song files, and you've also now they've introduced mastering files as well. And I love supporting the Cambridge Music Technology website and using some of the tracks on the channel, but it's not really designed for YouTube. I know they say that you can use them for educational purposes, but when it comes to the agreements they have with the artists, when it comes to advertising and things like that, now I'm not this channel is not advertised at the moment, but it still shows up if I feature a song through the Cambridge Music Technology website. If it's released, it still does come up with a warning that it's obviously I can't monetize the channel. Now that's not an issue. I say the channel's not monetized at the moment, but YouTube from 1st of June are going to advertise any channel regardless of whether they're in the YouTube partner program or not. So it's I just need to be I think we just need to be really kind of careful as to what I kind of use. So I really want to feature different songs from different artists. I've got some great stuff that I've mastered for clients that I'm going to be featuring over the next few weeks. But I do want to get some more tracks in as well. So if you want your song mastered and featured on the channel, get in touch, smudge@masteringitb.com, and then let's have a discussion around what we can do, and we can get the songs featured. And on any mastering any songs I feature on the channel, I always look to kind of promote the artist as well. So if it's something you want to, we want to have a discussion around some promotion as well, then we can we can have that discussion as well. So if anyone's got any songs they want to be mastered, then get in touch, smudge@masteringitb.com. And then just to reiterate what I just mentioned earlier on is if anyone wants some one-to-one coaching or mix and master critiques, I am going to be offering services through Fiverr.com. So it's going to be fiverr.com/smudgemitb. Those services aren't up and running yet, but they will be up within the next couple of days. So it's just something else. I've had quite a lot of feedback around providing one-to-one coaching or critiquing. So it's just some additional services that if people are interested in those, then they will be being offered through Fiverr.com as well. Yeah. So so much. I'll get so much. I want the membership scheme is going to be. It's on a hold at the moment because I'm looking at the best platform. I started to run the membership scheme through the buymeacoffee.com website. I still got the buymeacoffee.com account, so if anyone does want to support the channel, there's a link in the chat there. But it's just, for me, I was kind of looking at the best platform to host the membership scheme. So it's going to be more, I want it to be more of an academy where I do very much kind of like, we can have an exclusive live Q&A. I want to do lots of interviews, and I've got quite a few contacts with different people. So I wanted to do some interviews, and there's lots of different companies that are reaching out to me saying they want to offer discounts and things like that, and have that, and also have some more advanced techniques. YouTube is a great platform, but it's not particularly for the longer videos. It's not possibly the best platform to be doing some of those. It's great for the shorter, 10 to 20 minute videos rather than something like the hour and a half things. Livestream is a bit different, but some of those more in-depth techniques and tips that I really want to kind of do as part of an academy. So it was originally going to be through buymeacoffee.com. I was then thinking about Patreon and maybe doing a Patreon type scheme, but there is a new something that's coming or been put to my attention today, in fact, which is a website facility that does, it's bespoke for mastering, it's bespoke for audio individuals and companies, and it has a membership facility as part of that. So that could be something as well, which that we look to integrate, because I really want to build more of a community as well. The Facebook group is okay, but I really want to do some form of membership platform where we can really start to build as a community, get a bit more direct contact with each other, and really share some tips as a group, because I think we could all learn from each other that way. As I say, I've got lots of things kind of lined up with that as to different value add parts we can make to that membership. So it'll be, watch out for that in due course. Another question: I know that minimum phase EQ changes phase, and that is sometimes problematic with mixing. But when it comes to mastering, does it matter? It's a difficult one to kind of answer, because there's kind of like, I mean, there's so many different thought processes, and some people will say when it comes to EQ, only use linear phase and things like this, and be honest, I don't really sweat it. I really don't sweat it. I think it's kind of like, just let your ears be the guide. And I know there will be people out there saying, oh no, you must do this and you must do that, but no, I mean, does it really matter? No. There are mastering engineers out there who will forego peak level and actually have a bit of clipping, and they will compromise on clipping. So if you've got certain mastering engineers that are prepared to compromise on clipping, professional mastering engineers prepared to compromise on clipping, then when it comes to talking about phase and EQ, I wouldn't sweat it too much. Just let your ears be the guide. Once again, it's, if it starts to sound, if you start doing a lot of like mid-side stuff, and one thing I'll tell you what. One thing that I will say is when it comes to phase, don't get drawn too much into these stereo widening plugins. If you want to get a faux width stereo widening feel, then go for a mid-side EQ. Use a high shelf on the sides. The top frequencies, it kind of gives the perception of width, rather than use a stereo widening plugin, because there's this big thing around, or this big kind of, it seems to be fashionable for people to use stereo widening plugins in mastering. And whilst they can be good in certain cases, it actually messes with the phase. And the more you push width with a stereo widening plugin, it basically gets your mono frequencies as well, and it pushes them, so you lose a lot of the definition in the mid frequencies. So I would be more concerned with stereo widening plugins than I would with phase with EQ. Hopefully that kind of that helps. Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes, see if there's any more questions that come through, because I'm sweating like a PIG, because I am sat right up next to this softbox. I have to lift my head up so you don't see quite as many of my chins. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover today. There's things that kind of cropping into my head, but I can't for the life of me think about it. Another thing, actually, funny enough, this is something I'll pose the question here on the live stream, and if someone wants to answer it, great. If not, if someone listens to this at a later date, then great. But what would your thoughts be around some form of buddying scheme? Not necessarily a scheme. It's probably, I don't want it to be formal, but I think one of the things that for me is having lots of different people to learn from and have different opinions from and all learn together. And I think when it comes to mastering as well, is maybe having some dedicated mastering engineers who can buddy up with some mix engineers and kind of hopefully learn from each other. Because I think it kind of is always seen as kind of like the master engineer. As a master engineer, you kind of give advice to the mix engineer, but it's so much to learn as a master engineer from the mix engineer, because it's kind of like, okay, well, if I hear a particular build up, I can't quite put my, I can't might want to be able to put my hand to it and say, oh, well, what exactly is wrong here? I know it's in this frequency range. What exactly is the issue? In that case, is go back to the mix engineer or build up a buddying scheme and say, what do you think could be the problem here? And it could be, a correlation between certain instruments or the way it's been compressed and things like that, and like vice versa. If you're doing a mix and you think, is this kind of, is this dynamic enough? Is this kind of, am I pushing the boundaries too much here? And something like that. I don't know. What's your thoughts on kind of like a buddying scheme? If it was something that we could kind of set up as part of a community, whether maybe it's something like a Discord community that we could set up and have more like a, something like that where we can really kind of get to engage as a community. Would that be something that that people would find useful? I'm learning just as much through trying different things, but I'm also learning so much from different people as well. Just giving me different ideas and different ways of looking at things, and I think we can all learn from each other in different aspects. So if something like a buddying scheme, people or a buddying support program or whatever we want to call it would help, then if anyone's got any feedback on that, then let me know. And always, don't forget, if anyone's got any questions, just drop me an email, smudge@masteringitb.com, smudge@masteringitb.com, and any questions at all, drop me a note and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'm more than happy to really help people as much as possible. So. Okay, give it the last couple of minutes. Let's have a quick look here. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap this live stream up in a second then, because my OBS is telling me it's 1 hour and 57 minutes, but it's not, because obviously it wasn't playing back live on YouTube, so that's a little bit frustrating. But I'll wrap it up in a second. But I just want to say that thanks for everyone who's participated, everyone who's come along and watched the live stream today. It's my 3rd live stream. I want to, no worries, Heavy Metal Mixer. Thanks for coming along. It's my 3rd live stream. I will get better at these as time wears on, and I'll probably look to do something once a month or something like that, and have something a bit more formal around when they are, because I do like them. There's lots of different things, as I say, that I want to content that I want to show you guys, and hopefully I'll get some more feedback as to what you guys want. So I hope you like the live streams. It's just a bit of a different format, have these Q&As, etc., and just get a bit of a chance to to answer some questions and things. And thanks for all the support for the channel. We are very, very quickly approaching 1,000 subscribers, which is fantastic. So thank you to everyone who's shown the channel support. I cannot believe it's when you look at the watch hours and the the views, and it's got such a vast audience of people now, which is absolutely amazing. And to have almost 1,000 subscribers has just been absolutely fantastic. And it's not just local, it's global. We've got subscribers from all over the world. Some have got YouTube channels, some haven't, and it's really kind of it's really humbling, and it's good to know. It's good to have that feedback from to know that people are really interested in the subjects and interested in listening to me waffle and talking rubbish at times, quite frankly, because I tend to say, why say 2 words when you can say 1,000? It's you might as well talk for England as I do. So, you know, thanks once again for your support. And yeah, I'll end the live stream now. So thank you once again. And if anyone's got any questions at all, smudge@masteringitb.com, or if you do want one of your songs featured on the channel, then please get in touch and let's have a chat, and we'll see what we can do. All right, well, thanks for joining, everyone, and I hope you all keep safe and well, and I'll see you in the next video coming real soon.